surpassed, penetrating, and perfect Dharma is rarely met with, even in 100,000 million kalpas. Having it to see and listen to, remember and accept, I vow to taste the truth of the Tathagata's teachings.
In Buddhism, when Zen practitioners share their understanding of the teachings and practice, it is offered freely as a practice of dana paramita. Dana is a Pali word that means generosity or to give freely, and this practice is done without expectation of getting something in return. This is the spirit of speaking about the Dharma. Other ways to practice dana is to offer support to those who share the teachings, to support places of spiritual practice, and to give without judgment or expectation when opportunities arise. Those who share the teachings at Great Tree do so on a dana basis. Please support their practice by giving what you can. You can either do this directly or through Great Tree, and we will pass it on to them. And our speaker today is Liliane Myoren Papin. She is a Franco-American writer and teacher of Chinese medicine, which she describes as an ecological medicine particularly suited for our times. She practices and teaches acupuncture, herbology, qigong, and dietary therapy. Her books are The Treasure of Chinese Medicine for Today's World, The Great Book of Daoist Medicine and Immunity Special Edition, and Dare Sea Vegetables, Therapeutic and Culinary Uses of Sea Vegetables. Welcome. Nice to see you. Oh, I think you're muted right now, but...
Oh, yes. Okay, here we go.
Well, I'll mute us and...
Okay, so you can hear me fine now? Yes? Okay. All right. So today I thought I would have a bit of fun with you, exploring stomach energy from the point of view of Taoism and Buddhism too. And so the title of my talk today is Desire, Attachment, and Greed, Stomach Stories from the East. Okay, so first of all, before I start, I see myself, and that's no fun, so I just want to see you. There we go. So I'm going to start with showing you two diagrams that I think by now some of you know pretty well. So we're going to share the screen. All right. And we're going to start here. Slideshow. All right. Okay, so you're familiar with this. I call that a wheel of medicine, actually, even though it's a term we tend to use for American Indian tradition. I think, and that might be a title for our next book, that's a wheel of medicine from Asia. So you know that one of the 5 energies, and this is not the one that we're going to look at today. But this one, I call it a cosmic model of the 5 energies, where you see the earth energy is right here, meaning that the earth itself belongs to that cycle of the 5 energies. Okay, but again, that's not the topic of today. So here it is too. So you know there are emotions and organs that are linked to all, to each of the 5 energies. So today, here is the model we're going to use today. And this one I called an earthling model, meaning that we are earth residents. And so we are at the center, right? And there are the four directions. So you see that the earth has changed position and is now at the center of that diagram. And what is at the center is also stomach and spleen. And sometimes I think nowadays, it's better to say spleen and pancreas energy, because that's really what it is. It corresponds to that. And usually when we talk about the five energies, we talk about mostly, and you might have heard that in Chinese medicine, there is a tendency to say, for example, heart energy, spleen energy, lung energy, kidney energy. So without going too much into detail, basically to refer to the yin organs, because that's where the precious essences are located. Okay, so that's very often we're going to say, well, earth energy is spleen. However, I have come to the conclusion lately when I teach Chinese medicine that it makes more sense right now in our world, I think, to reverse what we say and say stomach energy first, stomach and spleen, not meaning one is more important than the other one, but because those organs tend to be forgotten a little bit. And they are really, in terms of Chinese medicine, they're the protectors and of the precious essences. And really, they are the organs, the systems that link us to the external world. So stomach, for example. And I invite you for a moment to feel your stomach, to put your hand on the center of your body. And this is where our stomach is. All right. And very often we don't think about that. And indeed, as you can see, as you can feel, our stomach is really in the center of our body. Above, we have the lung, the heart. Below, we have the intestines, we have the kidney. On the sides, we have our liver, and we have our spleen. So really, the stomach is at the center. And again, this is what we call earth energy. And in Chinese medicine, it is said that the stomach is the center. And I'm going to say stomach rather than spleen, because that's where I want to put the emphasis today on how we treat our stomachs and how little we know our stomach and the importance of our stomach. So it's at the center and it's called earth energy, right? And indeed, it is our main relationship to the earth. When you think about it, that's where we get fed through herbs or whatever we eat. It comes from the earth. And so that's the place where we are directly connected to the earth. Even though today we are so removed from the earth in our thinking, in our mental model, we go to a supermarket and, we buy stuff. So we forget the relationship between us and the earth, and certainly between our stomach and the earth, and the fact that our stomach is indeed earth energy and fed through earth energy. It is said also in Chinese medicine that it is this center of the stomach directs or houses the yi. The yi is kind of the spirit of the stomach. It's sometimes translated by intention, sometimes translated by thought, the center of our thought. Think about that. Not just physical, but that's where our thoughts get created in that model. All right? And it is considered also that spleen and stomach energy is where our blood and flesh are constructed. This is where the body you have. It is also called where our postnatal energy resides. Again, think about that. This is huge. Our postnatal energy. So meaning our prenatal energy, which we had seen before, if you recall, is kidney energy. In terms of our status as earthlings, there's not much we can do about that, right? We get born with a certain physical outlook, with a certain skin color, and, sure, we can change the color of our hair. We can wear lentils to change the color of our eyes, but basically we can't change anything. And it's our body that knows when to grow teeth, when to grow hair, puberty. All of that happens without our will. With stomach energy, we come to postnatal energy, meaning that's the energy that we create. And that's where it gets really interesting in the East, because it's a concept that's really central to Asian traditional philosophy and thinking, that our postnatal energy, our freedom, resides in our stomach and spleen. So that's pretty big, isn't it? And so, like I said, also, when I began this series and what I was teaching this year with exploring with my students was the emotional aspect. And through Tibetan Buddhism, or at least what I discovered through Tibetan Buddhism and Trungpa Rinpoche, is the fact that our negativities, the ones that we'd like to put under the carpet, that we'd like not to have, not to see, that we are ashamed of, not proud of, are actually very juicy. So I've tried to take that and see with each center and the emotions that are attached to each center, how that could be applied. So in terms of this center of the stomach, it is also the center of desire in that, concept. And as you know, desire, there are often translations from it, because it's difficult. It's like desire is often described as one of the three poisons, right? Greed, attachment, one of the three poisons. And it is also considered, again, I'm more familiar at this point with some concept in Tibetan Buddhism, but they do say that there are two two primary emotions that every human being, gets born with. One is fear, and the other is desire. And fear, because when we're a baby, when we're a fetus and we get born, of course, suddenly, we experience cold, light, and we are totally powerless. We are totally dependent on our environment. So again, postnatal energy. And same thing with the stomach. Is like being hungry is the first desire that we experience. And we're totally dependent on our environment. And it's a very strong, fiery desire. If you've ever looked at a baby, sure, they're zen and sweet, and when they sleep, when they smile, but when they're hungry, they change, don't they? They scream, and it's a fiery desire. And everything on this earth, including us, experience that hunger, that fundamental desire to be fed. And sure, we're very sophisticated as adults. We have enough to eat. I know in my case, I've never experienced hunger like people do in many countries. So I know hunger, if I eat late, or I do know a bit, but I don't really know what hunger is like. And yet I know that if I hungry too long, I can get pretty short with people. And if you look around in restaurants, I did work in a restaurant at some point as a student. And I remember how struck I was by the difference of mood there was in people before breakfast and after breakfast. It's like before breakfast, before the first cup of tea, they were, monsters, and nothing is good. And then they eat and they drink, and suddenly, the one who was so eager and had to go and it had to be fast, well, suddenly there's all the time in the world to chat, to talk about the weather. Truly a big change. Same thing with a baby. The screaming baby who is hungry, you feed that baby, everything is fine. If you have animals, dogs or cats, that's also a pretty impressive display of difference in mood. And so that's a primary emotion. There's no way around it. We all have that experience. And so that's why it's one, that desire to live. And plants have that too. It's a fiery desire to be alive, to sustain life. So that's why when it's considered one of the three poisons, that's a bit difficult. And I know there's quite a bit written, like I know, for example, one Buddhist monk, Mathieu Ricard in France, he said, well, it's not desire that's the problem, is what desire becomes, greed and attachment. So very often you have a play or you have, translations that are changed because desire is a pretty cumbersome word. Even, for example, let's say that if we don't want to have any desire, well, that's a desire in itself, right? So it's like the snake that bites its tail. It's impossible, right? And so what you see very often in people who work on being without desire, having no desire, is that they often become kind of lifeless, you know, a sort of indifference, because that's also a primordial, let's say, a primordial gush of life. And again, that we see in the baby. So then, of course, is how do we manage that desire? And we tend to link desire with sexual desire. But if you think about it, sexual desire does not come first. And I think Freud made a mistake about that. That's not what comes first. What comes first is the desire to eat. You know, if you're very hungry and you don't eat, and you know, like in countries where people don't have anything to eat, well, there's no way they're gonna have sex either. You need to be fed first, right? So again, in Chinese medicine or in Taoism, it's no wonder that you have that earth energy at the center. And to a big extent, we have forgotten the power of that center. And that's a big mistake also, because it's the quality of our blood, the quality of our flesh, and in that model, the quality of our thinking. Right? And we certainly all have had the experience, or at least have seen in people, the experience that if you eat too much, if we drink too much, the mind does change. And again, you just have to watch people carefully before and after a meal to see the difference. If we eat too much, we feel sleepy. Our mind is not sharp anymore. So, and you can say also that that desire is the biggest worry that there is, because the emotion that is considered to hurt stomach energy, earth energy, is worry. And indeed, even though, again, we think we are very sophisticated, think about all the energy that goes into eating. All the energy that goes into it, into preparing a meal. And when I say eating, it's drinking too. Preparing a meal, buying the food, planting the food. And right now, ecologically, we can say that our ignorance of our stomach energy is, I think, the first cause of also all the problems that we have, the greed that we have. It's for example, cattle grazing and cattle raising is the first cause of deforestation. That's why we cut our forest to have land so that cattle can be fed, right? And all the cereal that we grow mostly goes to cattle as well. And it's interesting, for example, if you think at the word capitalism, it comes from the word capita. And capita means head. And so that refers to the time when your wealth was counted in how many cattle heads you owned. How many, and of course, that's linked also to how much you could be fed. So where I want to go with that is, number one, that need for us to redefine or think about desire and think about our stomach. In old days, predating Buddhism, in Vedism, actually, desire was considered a creative impulse, the most important creative impulse. the impulse of creation. And there was a goddess of creation whose name was Rati. Right? And later, with Hinduism in particular, desire had a bad connotation, but that was not always the case. Right? Again, as a principle of creation. So I'm thinking of Trungpa Rinpoche, again, who said, you know, it's juicy. So, of course, in our worry, in our desire, in our greed and attachment, it's very powerful. And certainly there is destructive, a destruction involved, possibly. But that's not all there is. And it's interesting to look at, because in the West in particular, we tend to think of digestion and stomach issues as secondary. You just have to watch TV, right? All the remedies that are offered for acid reflux, and you know, it's like, well, it's common, and so it's not important. In the East, in traditional Eastern philosophy, it's very different. And actually, you probably know in Dogen's text, there's a text where the instructions to the cook by Dogen, you're probably familiar with that book because Tejo refers to it quite a bit. And the cook in traditional Buddhism, long time ago, the cook, the tenzo, was considered the most important function in the temple. Why? Because it was known that the way we feed people, the way we are fed, changes our health, our physical health, and also our mind. So as you know, in Zen Buddhism, and I know at Great Tree you practice that with Shojin Yoryori, the traditional way of cooking, and oryoki, you know, the 3 bowls. And sometimes it's easy to forget the importance of that. Even in Zen temples, for example, we tend to eat very quickly, when really at the beginning, it came from that consciousness of the importance of that stomach-mind relationship. And Dogen, in instructions to the cook, is very well aware of that, you know, and that includes how you prepare the food, the details and the mood with which you prepare the food, the attention you give to the food. And it's not just, we tend to think it's for concentration, but I think it goes much deeper than that. And again, I really appreciated when I was in Asheville that Tejo was so aware of that and had that practice as part of the training at Great Tree, which has been forgotten in many, many places. So you find that concept also in macrobiotics. For example, the macrobiotic movement was founded on that principle that food is a way of creating health and disease. And that's what we do every day. And of course, just like you, I forget again and again, meaning eating too much. So, and you can say the stomach is our best teacher. If we are aware of it, if we are aware of our desire for food, we realize that it's really a very strong impulse. And there is a freedom that comes with being able to manage that desire. Of course, addictions start there. And lack of control starts there. And you can say that when the Buddha defined the middle way, right, as between extreme asceticism on one hand and luxury on the other hand, and he went from one side to the other and defined the middle way. Well, the stomach is no doubt the best organ to teach us the middle way. At the beginning, when we're young, at least if there hasn't been too much interference, the stomach teaches us when things are too salty, when things are too hot, when they're too cold. It teaches us what happens when we eat too fast or too much. But then we are so disconnected with our earth energy, with our stomach energy, that we keep doing it. And think about that poor center in our body. Everything we put in it, the speed at which we put it in it, and all the drinks and whatever we put in there. And in Chinese medicine, in one text, it talks about the stomach, spleen, as the servant of the body. And when I see that now, I don't think that's right. It's not the servant. It's a misunderstanding, or I should say, is maybe how we underestimate servants and secretaries and all the people who help us, because it's the center. Everything starts there, And if we experience hunger, you know how obsessive it quickly becomes, right? Where to get. And if we look around us, we see how obsessive food is. And I'm going to show you again, actually, a slide. So you find the concept, and that comes from Tibetan Buddhism, the hungry ghost, right? The hungry. So again, hunger in its first definition, which of course becomes more after that. But the hungry ghost is the one who is unsatisfied, which is one of the main causes of dukkha, right? This unsatisfaction with who we are, what we have, what we should be, what we are not, whatever. This unsatisfied feeling. It's also the concept of never enough. So there is addiction there. Never enough. We want more, whatever more can be. More knowledge, more wealth, more power, more. And again, stomach being at the center of that intention and desire. Always hungry, because never satisfied. And it is said in Tibetan Buddhism that they are the ghosts who haunt living beings, because they are in a bardo. They don't know that they're not alive anymore, or at least only halfway, and they still want to enjoy earthly pleasures. So it is said that, especially like in bars or in places like that, they haunt those places to feed through human beings who drink too much, eat too much. And it's interesting that when we talk about addiction, or when we know people who are in the grips of addiction, very often they do say that they don't feel like themselves. It's like when the desire for whatever comes, suddenly it's like another personality takes over, haunted by their desires. So whether we believe in the ghosts and in that part of the hungry ghost, certainly we can relate on an emotional level what the hungry ghost in us is. Because again, it's an emotion, it's a center that all human beings, all that is alive on this earth has to experience and tame. And I don't say control, tame and become friend with, know well and become friend with it. And so here I created a different image that's more, maybe speaks more to our modern time. Here is a version of the hungry ghost in our modern day, and all you can eat buffet, I think, are probably one of the best modern equivalents of that hungry ghost. Fast food, the word itself, fast food, is hungry ghost, because our stomach is not made for fast food. On the contrary, he's made for slow chewing. In the East, we call saliva a nectar, the nectar. And we know in modern science that saliva is alkaline, so it has the power to balance acidity. And we know what we feel when we eat fast, or fast food, by definition, already shows a degeneration of, I think, the human species, truly. Because we're not made for fast food. We're made for slow food. And that addiction with everything quick, fast, more, all you can eat. Well, no, all we can eat. It's like people who say, when we talk about vegetarian, I often get the comment, oh, for me, I'm very free. I can eat everything. And again, it's like fast food is like, we're not made to eat everything. We are made to choose. And that's very interesting. The solar plexus, where our stomach is also the center of choice. Economic growth, the concept of constant economic growth, that is the concept that dominates our world today, is nonsense. We're not made for that either. And of course, all of our publicity is based on more, getting more. So you see how much it dominates our life, and how we're not connected with the earth anymore, and in our choice of food. And it's interesting that Carl Jung, and maybe some of you know Carl Jung, he has described the solar plexus, where our stomach is, as a center of individuation, meaning a bit like in the East, where we say that it's postnatal energy. It's where we choose. what we eat, and through the choice of food. In the East, there's very much the concept that through our choices of food, we build our body and our mind. And so the practice of Shojin Ryo, how do you say? Shojin Ryori, yes, reflects that and is not always totally understood. You know, I know myself, when I started with Tejo, I enjoyed the process and it was nice, but I did not really think about it too deeply. And it's really through Chinese medicine and Taoism that I was led to and encountering all the diseases that come from the wrong choices of food. And of course, even in Western medicine, we had Hippocrates, who is the grandfather of our medicine. He used to say, your food is your medicine. And Dogen said that food itself is Dharma. Right? So we need, I think, to reconnect so deeply. And when Jung said it's your center of individuation, meaning like, again, we inherit a body, we inherit a certain type, but from the stomach on, from the solar plexus, is where the heart emerges. That's where the mind emerges. So the bottom of the body in that model is what we inherit and what reflexes we get. But then from the stomach, from the center of the stomach, we build our choice and our freedom. And that's very much at the center of, I would say, old Eastern philosophy. There are so many stories about that, about people who change their destiny through changing their way of life and their food. And of course, food, we have to understand it it gets bigger and bigger. At the beginning, certainly it's food and what we eat, because that's what makes our blood, and that's what makes our flesh. And our brain is fed through our blood. No, it does not come. We have a hard time, human beings, with the fact that we are born in a body. And we're constantly struggling with our body, you know, being too thin, being too fat, too much this, too much that, wanting more muscle. We have such a difficult time being human beings in the flesh, right? And again, you can say that's our relationship to earth energy and stomach energy. So to complicate things, the taste that associated with spleen stomach is, I can ask you to guess, what do you think is the taste associated with spleen stomach? I want to say stomach spleen. Any guess?
Is it bitter?
No, not bitter.
Is it sour because of the acids that break things down in there?
Nope. Nope, nope, nope. That's liver.
Is it sweet?
Yes, 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 yes. And indeed, glucose is what gives us our energy. So you can see how big the addiction to sugar has become. Diabetes right now is the only chronic disease that the World Health Association has put on the same level as epidemics, because it develops at the speed of epidemics. And no country escapes that. And so, of course, it's one of the most difficult tastes to manage. And I had a teacher, a Japanese teacher, who used to say that if we crave sweet and sugar so much, is because there's not enough sweetness in our life, that we need to love and be loved more. That's what he used to say. In terms of disease, the first feeling that corresponds to stomach and spleen, the first sign of stomach disorder is heaviness, feeling heavy. So, of course, it's heavy when we have eaten too much, you know, that feeling of, excuse me. I need to drink a bit more too. So when we have that heaviness and heaviness of the mind too. So Chinese practitioners love it when people say that they feel heavy, because right away, heavy is a definition of stomach spleen energy that's imbalanced. So we know, okay. So it's because what comes from stomach energy is mucus, humidity, you know, things that are not digested right, that tend to be stagnant. And so they can lodge anywhere in the body. And that heaviness that comes with it, including the heaviness that comes with sinusitis, you know, when we have lots of phlegm in our nose, all of that is stomach spleen imbalance. So, meaning that the first place to look at and to heal in order to reestablish balance in that area. So, basically, you could say that what comes in Chinese medicine model with heavy stomach is that heaviness of the mind, heaviness of the spirit, lack of clarity, where suddenly we don't really know what we want. My teacher, again, it was Michio Kushi, he used to call that wishy-washy. He said, you know, wishy-washy thinking, that's bad stomach spleen energy. You know, maybe yes, maybe no, I want this, but not quite. That's part of it. Of course, bad digestion is also undigested food, but also undigested knowledge. When we repeat something that we have not really digested, you can say it's an intellectual acid reflux. You know, when we say things, we repeat, but we are not. And sometimes, again, some of my teachers, whom I'm very grateful to, would correct us. If I say, well, I know, but I don't do it, they say, well, then don't say you know. If you don't do it, you don't know. Again, it's just intellectual acid reflux or regurgitation, being able to say it. In order to, it's like food. If food stays in the stomach and stagnates in the stomach, it's not going to do any good. It has to be digested and transformed into our blood and flesh. So any knowledge, it's the same thing. And of course, it's a life process. So what I would say, there are some antidotes. I'm not going to go too much into that, but some antidotes to attachment, greed is, of course, one of them is generosity, giving to others. So, for example, there are simple things that are good to practice. So, for example, I know myself, if let's say I cut an avocado in two, and there's a half that's a bit bigger than the other one, and well, that's where my greed goes, and I would like to have the bigger one. So it's a training for me when I notice that to make myself give it to someone and not take it for myself, which, it takes effort. It's a practice. And so whenever, like, for example, if we're in a hurry because we're hungry and we want to be first in line when, given our place to other people to go first, that's good exercise too. And it's not, there's no need to be hard on oneself because, again, all earthlings have to go through that process from the moment of birth. That I'm hungry, I want to eat. And then it gets transferred to so many things, sexuality, power, money, but that's basically that same fear, the second primary emotion, that same fear of not having enough, of not being enough. And of course, taking time, chewing, making oneself chew. Thich Nhat Hanh recommends 30. My teachers recommended 50 times, which is it's really not that much, 50. I've participated in some spiritual trainings where we had to chew 300 times. And that took a long time. It was very interesting to see at the beginning how we made the bowl quite full. And then slowly, we put less because it takes a lot of time and it gets your jaws tired. However, what I remember from those experiences is not being hungry at all during the day. So chewing and going against the fast food. And of course, regulate our blood sugar, because the ups and down in our moods, in our energy, are pretty much related to our blood sugar levels and sweetness, the sweetness of our blood. So that's a whole program. And just to finish, I would say what's interesting in modern science is that insulin, the role of insulin in the pancreas, is the only hormone in the body that is, hypoglycemic, meaning that it lowers, it's a bit like a thermostat. The signal that it sends is enough. When there is insulin, it's saying, I have had enough, I have had enough to eat, I have had enough. And that's the signal that we don't hear anymore when we overeat, when we're in the grip of addiction. We cannot hear that signal again. So it's interesting to see that in Western science, it does come to a meeting point with the East, and when you think of the word satisfaction, I'm thinking of the Rolling Stone song. I don't know if you know it because you're young, many of you, but I can get no satisfaction, right? Well, satis is the Latin word for enough, right? Satis, enough. So being satisfied, having enough, that's the role, the message from insulin. And so we can say that diabetes, on a collective level, that epidemic of diabetes is a sign of not hearing anymore that enough, and our unbalanced relationship with our earth energy, outside and inside. Voila, that's what I'd like to leave you with today. And of course, if you have a few questions, and we don't have much time, but we do have a couple of minutes.
I had a question. I was wondering about like when people that saying that you have like a pit in your stomach, or kind of like a different, because I feel like maybe instead of the like hungry, it's like the feeling of like not being able to eat because it
Yeah,
feels like there's
absolutely.
something there already. I was
It's the
wondering if
same.
you have any insight about that.
Well, basically the same, meaning that the stomach, especially through our personality, we react in different ways, but emotions are very much felt in the stomach, in the center. So it's a very tender place. And for some people, in order not to hear or not to feel, they're going to eat a lot. For other people, because it's the solar plexus, it has this name because there are so many nerves. It looks like a sun. If you look at a picture of the solar plexus, that's why it's called that way. It looks like the sun with many rays, and those rays are nerves. And actually, the vagus nerve is related to the stomach and to all organs, but the stomach is the only organ where the vagus nerve has two connections. So meaning our emotions, our feelings are directly related to the stomach. So for sure, chewing well, that's a training. Doesn't mean, overnight, but it's like breathing well. That's a place to bring back some balance into that area. Same thing, I mean, there are many ways, massage, some herbs, meaning helping that stomach area. And usually it's a good indication that our relationship to the earth, to food, to emotions of the earth are imbalanced. And so it's a friend. The stomach is our friend. It's telling us, hey, look, or here, listen. And slowly, as we take care of it, slowly things get better. And for sure, chewing when we feel anxious, not going into, either eating too fast or, slowly breathing, everything you do at grade 3, when you are when you are in session, that's a great opportunity to work on that center on a physical and emotional and spiritual level. So it's the same process with different reactions. Is that all right?
That makes sense. Yeah, that helps. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Liliane, for your talk. Everything you said resonates, and I think I've heard of it being described as a center of intuition as well, and I certainly feel like a real intuitive process by where the stomach kind of tells you what it wants, and what kind of how you decide what you eat and when, and of course there's so many different ways to do that, and science and nutrition and all the popular stuff gives you all kind of ideas too. But I guess I'm curious if you have any thoughts on kind of how to navigate
that process of particularly when, because it also feels like it likes variety too in some ways. Like it likes some variety as far as when you're eating and what you're eating.
Okay, I'm not sure I understand. So I followed you on the intuition.
Yeah.
What is difficult, of course, I think that's what you mean, is how to choose. Is that?
Yeah, I think so. And like a specific example, I've had a desire to somehow start working a drink of spices like cayenne and turmeric and ginger and lemon juice and just something like that into a diet, but I don't quite know when in the day to consume it. Even though it feels like something right, it's hard to figure out, and like when to eat breakfast, early or later, and just some of those kind of things. Yeah.
Right. And, that's definitely, again, that's part of the journey of earthlings. And we have trouble with that, don't we? You see the number of diets, so I cannot answer you in one. And I myself, I'm learning and I make mistakes. And basically, I think what we can watch for, the first thing is where addiction tends to be. So where obsession, and when we don't hear so well. So for example, for the drink you're talking about, you need first to see with your stomach, how is your stomach is going to respond to that. Is it going to feel good? Is your digestion going to be much better? Are you going to feel energetic or not? So if we can reestablish that connection, because it can be good for someone and not so good for another one. Again, my teacher, Michio Kushi, used to say that if we crave spices, is maybe because our life doesn't have enough excitement. So, that's, but basically our stomach, if we pay attention, and if, does it feel good? And not feel good for a minute and then being sick, the next day because drinking too much and so on. But does it nourish me? Do I feel better? Is my health better? Is it helping or, so that's where stomach energy can be very precise and can help us, including how to choose in the multiple. And I will maybe just leave with that. One thing that I'm more and more convinced of, and that Chinese medicine and Taoism are helping me with, is that our body is not different from the planet. We are the same. So instead of thinking, is it good for me? We need to think more, is it good for all of us? For example, vitamin D. We say, oh, we need more vitamin D. And what do? We fish and fish and fish and in order to have fish oil, right? Well, it's not sustainable, right? So I think that if we think of that interdependence that Buddhism encourages, meaning that getting out of what is just good for me, but what is good for the whole, can be also very helpful in our decisions. Right, that's the best I can answer now. Thank you for that question.
Thank you, Liliane, for sharing your time and energy and knowledge and wisdom with us. We appreciate you.
Very welcome. It's a pleasure. Thank you to you all. Are you in session?
Not right now.
Oh, not right now.
Our next session will be October.
Okay, okay. It's a good place to practice chewing, for sure.
Yes, definitely.
All right.
We'll give back the merit and then have a few announcements and then close out. May the merit of this practice
May the merit of this practice
benefit all beings
benefit all beings,
and bring peace.
and bring peace.
Thank you.
I have the announcements here. So tomorrow is family meditation, and that will be at 10:30, and we're gonna do the meditation with the kids, and that's also in person and on Zoom. And then on Monday is the strawberry full moon, which will be on Zoom or in person. I think it's at 7 p.m., but I can check and make sure on the website.
7 p.m.
Okay, great. And then next weekend is Genjo, and the Dharma talk will be Karma is this very moment. Okay, awesome. That'll be next Saturday, and the talk will be at 10, and we'll have it on Zoom and Zazen here at the temple too at 9:30. Thank you.
Thank you.